Any surprise in the number for you?
Haven't looked at it, but I thought exports would go up a little bit. The flattening of exports, to my mind, is really a pretty serious matter, Jeff. You know, world trade is down about 12%, and the Germans have been pretty immune to that. And even though the net number, the balance is good, it means it'll contribute to GDP maybe, but incomes will be down because of this. People who make stuff to sell for exports could lose their jobs if exports start to actually go down, as they are in most countries, including this one. You're going to get a trade number here later today, and it's not going to look nearly as good as that one.
So the fall in imports widened the seasonally adjusted trade surplus to 24 billion euros from a revised 23.7 billion in March, which had been the highest monthly value so far. Does Germany just continue to benefit from the low interest rate strategy the ECB has employed to bail out the rest of the Eurozone?
Well, they benefit to the extent that companies in Germany can get loans at these very, very low interest rates. I mean, it's sort of amusing to an economist, you know, to hear all this talk about negative interest rates, but then you go to the bank to ask for a loan and you don't get one. You know, the data show that lending to small businesses and to medium-sized enterprises is actually down since the ECB started its quantitative easing. So while on the wall it says the interest rate is zero or negative, right? If you're a small business, you're going to get a loan and you can't get one, the interest rate you're facing infinitely high, and you can't make money at an infinitely high interest rate, so it's not entirely great.
This is a good figure, isn't it? The fresh monthly you two sound so downbeat. Good morning, Carl, by the way.
Good morning.
This is a trade surplus hitting a fresh monthly record. This is the Germans turning around and saying, do you know what? We'll buy less stuff regardless of what the ECB is telling us to do. We don't need the loans so much, rather than having a supply drought of finance. Maybe it's a demand drought. Actually, these companies don't want the money and they don't want to spend the money, and they're quite happy exporting to the world and taking in those euros and dollars.
So let's read the trade numbers a little bit differently. Exports were flat. Companies that make goods for exports are flat. So imports are down. Why? Oil prices are still down year over year. Commodity import prices are still down year over year. So the imports dropped, and that gave you this boost in net income. But for people who are making things to sell to people like you and Jeff and me outside of Germany, it's not necessarily as good news as you might think.
Do you know what? I could be an economist if you want. I could be pedantic about this. Adjusted exports may have been flat, but unadjusted exports, i.e. you haven't fiddled around with them on a monthly basis, up 3.8%. That's a good figure.
Well, you know better than to try to read anything out of unadjusted data. Now, come on, Steve.
Up 3.8%.
Any given month, anything can happen. There's seasonal influences in there. Take them out, and exports were flat. And that's been the story in the German numbers if you look at the full year or 3-month moving averages and so forth. The income coming in from net trade is good, but it's because the price of imports have gone down. The terms of trade have improved.
So that's a dream scenario for the Germans. Sorry, I will not spin this negatively today. I think that if you are selling more stuff abroad and the cost of your imports are going down, that is great news.
But if you are making less stuff to sell abroad, then you're employing no more people than you were before. And for the German worker, this is not good news. There are fewer people making Volkswagens, God forbid, or BMWs or Mercedes today than there were before, because of the fact that these export numbers are flat or going down.